We canceled your birthday. Your sister was upset.
Okay, then she can have my place in this family too.
My parents canceled my 30th birthday because my sister screamed that I did not deserve one. So I gave them exactly what they wanted. I disappeared, and within 6 months, the perfect life they built on my back collapsed. Hello, my name is Claire Bennett, and for most of my life, my family called me the easy one. It sounded like a compliment. It was not. It meant I was the daughter who never complained. The daughter who paid the emergency bill, remembered every appointment, repaired every mistake, and smiled while everyone else took the credit. My younger sister, Madison, was the opposite. She was beautiful, dramatic, and impossible to ignore. If Madison entered a room, the room belonged to her. If she was happy, everyone celebrated. If she was upset, the entire family stopped breathing until she felt better. I learned that rule when I was 8 years old. On the morning of my school science fair, Madison cried because she could not find her favorite pink sweater. My father spent an hour searching the house. My mother drove to 3 stores to buy a replacement. They missed my presentation, and I accepted second place while staring at 2 empty chairs. That night, Mom kissed my forehead and said, "You understand, sweetheart. You're the mature one." I carried those words for 22 years. By the time I turned 30, I understood that being mature in my family meant accepting whatever hurt they handed me and thanking them for trusting me with it. But on my 30th birthday, something inside me finally broke. It began 3 weeks earlier, when my mother called me at work. "Keep Saturday the 14th open," she said brightly. "We're finally doing something special for you." I nearly laughed. My birthdays were usually grocery store cake after dinner, if Madison did not have other plans. But 30 felt important. Maybe my parents had noticed how much I had done for them. Maybe, for once, I would not be an afterthought. Mom told me they had reserved the private room at Bellini's, an Italian restaurant near the river. She invited our relatives, 2 of my closest friends, and several people from my office. Dad even sent me a message asking for old photographs for a birthday slideshow. I let myself get excited. That was my first mistake. The second mistake was telling Madison. We were sitting at my parents' kitchen table when Mom mentioned the dinner. Madison slowly lowered her coffee cup. "Bellini's?" she asked. "Yes?" Mom replied. "Claire is turning 30. Madison stared at me. That is where I wanted to have my engagement dinner. There was one small problem with that sentence. Madison was not engaged. She had been dating a man named Tyler for 4 months, and he had never mentioned marriage. Still, Madison had already created a wedding folder, chosen bridesmaid colors, and told our mother that a proposal was probably happening soon. I tried to keep my voice light. "The restaurant can host more than one event, Maddie." Her eyes narrowed. "You always do this." "Do what?" "Take something I want and pretend it was your idea." I thought she was joking. Then her face twisted, and she started crying. Not quiet tears. Madison never cried quietly. She pushed her chair back so hard it hit the wall, shouted that no one respected her, and accused our parents of loving me more. My father immediately stood and put his arms around her. My mother looked at me with the familiar warning in her eyes. "Do not make this worse." I sat there while Madison listed every imaginary advantage I had received. I had a better career. I owned a nicer car. I had more savings. Now I was stealing her dream restaurant. She did not mention that I had worked 2 jobs through college, while she dropped out after 1 semester. She did not mention that nicer car was 7 years old, or that most of my savings had gone toward helping our parents. Dad finally said, "Claire, maybe we should choose another place." I looked at him. "The invitations already went out." "It is only a restaurant," Mom said softly. "Your sister is going through a sensitive time." I should have argued. Instead, I heard the old phrase in my head, "You're the mature one." "Fine," I said. "Choose another place." Madison stopped crying immediately. That should have warned me. 2 days later, Mom texted to say they had moved my dinner to their house. Bellini's deposit was non-refundable, so they would save the reservation for Madison's future engagement. I swallowed my disappointment and agreed. Then, on the morning of my birthday, my phone rang at 8:12. Mom sounded tired. "Claire, honey, we need to cancel tonight." I sat up in bed. "Is someone sick?" "No. But Madison had a terrible night. Tyler went out with friends, and she thinks he may be losing interest. She says a party for you would feel cruel right now." For several seconds I could not speak. "My friends are driving in from out of town," I finally said. "Aunt Rebecca booked a hotel." "I know. I'm sorry. We can do something small next month." "You are canceling my 30th birthday. because Madison's boyfriend went to a basketball game. Mom's voice hardened. That is an unfair way to describe it. Then I heard Madison in the background. If she cared about me, she wouldn't make this difficult. Something became very quiet inside me. Not calm. Empty. I asked, "Did you already cancel with everyone?" Mom hesitated. "Yes. They had made the decision before calling me." "All right," I said. Mom released a relieved breath. "Thank you for understanding. We knew you would." I ended the call. Then I walked to the bathroom mirror and studied my face. I expected to see tears. Instead, I saw a woman who looked exhausted. That was when I realized the truth. My family did not love me for being strong. They loved what my strength allowed them to avoid. They did not cancel my birthday that morning. They canceled my role in their family. They just did not know it yet. I called my best friend Nina and told her what happened. She was silent for 3 seconds. Then she said, "Put on something nice. I'm coming over." Nina had not canceled anything. Neither had my coworkers or Aunt Rebecca. By 6 that evening, 14 people were crowded into Nina's apartment with pizza, cheap champagne, and a chocolate cake that leaned slightly to the left. It was not elegant. It was perfect. Halfway through dinner, Nina tapped her glass and asked everyone to share one thing they appreciated about me. My coworker Daniel said I had protected his job when a manager blamed him for her mistake. Aunt Rebecca said I was the only person who visited her every week after her husband died. Nina said, "Claire shows up every time. Even for people who have never learned to show up for her." That sentence followed me home. I lived in the small apartment above my parents' detached garage. The arrangement had begun 2 years earlier when Dad's construction business started struggling. They asked me to move in and pay rent, saying it would help them keep the house. I paid $1,200 a month. I also paid the internet bill, handled the business bookkeeping for free, bought groceries twice a week, drove Mom to medical appointments, and covered Madison's car payment whenever she was between opportunities. Everyone said I was lucky because the apartment was close to family. That night, I finally calculated the price of that luck. I opened my laptop and reviewed 2 years of bank statements. My direct payments to my parents totaled more than $43,000. That did not include groceries, repairs, or the unpaid work I had done for Dad's company. Then I opened the business accounts. I had access because I prepared invoices and payroll reports. At first, everything looked familiar. Then I noticed 3 transfers from the company's emergency reserve to Madison's account. $8,000, $4,500, $11,000, $23,500 in 4 months. My hands went cold. Dad had told me the company could not afford a new estimating program. He had asked me to cover the property tax because cash flow was tight. Yet he had transferred almost $24,000 to Madison. I clicked through the notes. The first transfer said, "Marketing consultation." Madison had never worked in marketing. The second said, "Client entertainment." The third had no description. At 11:40 that night, I heard laughter from the main house. I looked through my window. My parents' dining room was full of people. Madison sat at the head of the table. In front of her was the expensive strawberry cake Mom had ordered for my birthday. They had not canceled the celebration. They had replaced the person being celebrated. Madison raised a glass. Everyone cheered. Then Tyler stood beside her. Even through the window, I saw the small velvet box in his hand. The Bellini's reservation, the tantrum, the canceled birthday, it had all been preparation for Madison's engagement, and my parents had paid for the ring. The next morning, Madison posted photographs online. She wore a cream dress. My cake stood behind her with the sugar flowers removed. Her caption read, "When one door closes, the perfect future begins." My mother commented, "Our beautiful girl deserves the world." I did not confront them. That surprised everyone later. They expected shouting because shouting would have given them a chance to call me jealous, emotional, or selfish. Instead, I became methodical. I made copies of the company records I had created. I downloaded every invoice, payroll report, and email related to my work. I did not take anything that was not mine. I simply preserved proof of what I had contributed and what money had been moved. On Monday, I called my bank and stopped the automatic transfer for rent. Then I contacted a lawyer named Alina Cruz, whom Nina recommended. Alina listened without interrupting. When I finished, she asked one question: "Do you want revenge or do you want freedom?" At the time, I thought those were the same thing. They were not. "Freedom," I said. She helped me separate myself from Dad's business. Because I was not an owner or official employee, I had no obligation to keep managing it. She also reviewed the records and found something worse than the transfers. My father had used my name on a business credit application. The signature was electronic, but I had never approved it. The account had a balance of $62,000. I stared at the page. Can he do that? No, Elena said. But he did. Suddenly, the cancelled birthday felt small. This was not favoritism anymore. This was fraud. Elena told me to freeze my credit and file an identity theft report. I felt sick at the thought of reporting my own father. For 2 days, I barely slept. Then Dad called and asked me to pay the monthly supplier invoice because the company account was short. He did not mention my birthday. He did not ask how I was. He called because he needed money. I filed the report that afternoon. Next, I found an apartment across town. It was smaller than the garage apartment, but it had tall windows, a little balcony, and one beautiful feature: no one in my family had a key. I signed the lease on Wednesday. On Thursday, while my parents and Madison attended a wedding expo, Nina and I moved everything I owned. It took 3 hours. 29 years of belonging to that family fit inside a rented truck. Before leaving, I placed my garage key, the business checkbook, and a printed resignation letter on the kitchen counter. The letter said, "Effective immediately, I will no longer provide bookkeeping, financial support, transportation, errands, or emergency assistance. Do not use my identity or credit for any purpose. Future contact regarding the business must go through my attorney." I did not mention the party. I did not mention the cake. I knew they would understand. My phone started ringing at 5:17. Mom called 6. Madison sent 23 messages. Her first message said, "Where are you?" Her fifth said, "Dad needs the payroll file." Her 12th said, "You are ruining my wedding." Her final message said, "You have always been jealous of me." Not one message asked whether I was safe. I changed my number. For the first month, the silence felt unnatural. I woke up expecting an emergency. I checked my phone during dinner. I felt guilty buying anything for myself, because someone in my family might need the money. Nina called it withdrawal. "You were addicted to being needed," she said. She was right. Then strange things began happening. My aunt called to ask whether Dad's company had closed. I told her I did not know. An old supplier emailed me about 3 unpaid invoices. I referred him to Dad. One of Dad's employees, Marcus, found me on social media. He said payroll had been late twice. Dad had blamed me, claiming I had deleted the company files before leaving. That was a lie. Everything was stored in the company's online account with instructions. I sent Marcus one screenshot showing the folder location, nothing more. 2 weeks later, he told me 4 employees had quit. Without me preparing bids, Dad missed 2 major project deadlines. Without me monitoring expenses, Madison continued charging wedding business costs to the company. Without my monthly payments, my parents fell behind on the mortgage. Their perfect life had not been stable. I had simply been holding the walls together. Then came the mystery that pulled me back in. One Friday evening, I received an envelope at work with no return address. Inside was a copy of a property document and a short handwritten note. "Claire, you need to know what they did with Grandma's house. Ask Rebecca." The handwriting looked familiar, but I could not place it. My grandmother had died 3 years earlier. She owned a small lake house in Wisconsin, where Madison and I spent our childhood summers. My parents told everyone she had left the property to them, and that they had sold it to cover medical debt. I called Aunt Rebecca. When I mentioned the document, she went silent. "I wondered when this would surface," she said. "What do you mean?" "Your grandmother did not leave the lake house to your parents. She left it to you and Madison equally." My knees nearly gave out. Rebecca explained that she had witnessed an early version of the will. After Grandma died, my father claimed a later will gave him the property. Rebecca challenged him, but my mother begged her not to divide the family. Eventually, Rebecca backed down. The document in my envelope was not the will. It was a refinancing record. My parents had never sold the lake house. They had transferred it to a company owned by Tyler's father, borrowed against it, and used the money to keep Dad's business alive. Months later, Tyler's father transferred it back to a trust controlled by my parents. "Why would they hide that?" I asked. Rebecca sighed. "Because your grandmother's final attorney believed the later will was forged." There it was, the next crack in the perfect picture. Identity theft. Hidden transfers. A possibly forged will. I suddenly understood why my parents had worked so hard to keep me obedient. They did not just need my money. They needed my silence. Elena hired a forensic document examiner and requested records from Grandma's former attorney. The investigation took 6 weeks. During that time, my family's situation became chaos. Tyler postponed the wedding after discovering that Madison had hidden nearly $40,000 in credit card debt. Madison blamed my parents for promising money they no longer had. Mom blamed Dad for mismanaging the business. Dad blamed me for abandoning them. Then the bank froze the fraudulent credit account opened in my name. Dad left me a voicemail through Elena's office. Claire, this has gone far enough. Families handle things privately. You are destroying your mother. I listened to it twice. He never said, I am sorry. He never said, I used your name. He said I was destroying them by refusing to let them destroy me. The document examiner concluded that Grandma's signature on the later will had likely been traced. Her attorney produced notes showing she intended the lake house to pass equally to Madison and me. Even more important, the notary listed on the later will had been out of the country on the date it was supposedly signed. Elena turned everything over to the appropriate investigators and filed a civil claim concerning the estate. That was when my mother came to my office. She stood in the lobby wearing sunglasses, though it was raining outside. I almost did not recognize her. She looked smaller, older. Please, she said. Just 5 minutes. We sat in a conference room with the door open. Mom folded her hands. Your father made mistakes. You knew about the loan in my name. Her eyes dropped. That answered me. You knew about Grandma's will too. She started crying. We were going to fix everything? With what? I asked. My money. She flinched. Then she said the sentence that erased the last of my doubt. You did not need the lake house, Claire. Madison needed a future. Even then, even with their home at risk and Dad under investigation, she believed Madison's future mattered more than mine. Why did you cancel my birthday? I asked. Mom blinked, surprised by the question. I want to hear you say it. She looked toward the open door. Tyler planned to propose that night. Madison wanted the family together, and Bellini's was already paid for. We thought you would understand. You served her my cake. It would have gone to waste. For a moment, I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the truth was finally so clear that it had lost its power to confuse me. I stood. Mom reached for my hand. If you continue with this case, your father could lose everything. I pulled my hand away. No, Mom. He already spent everything. He spent my trust, my credit, Grandma's final wishes, and every chance I gave him. The bill simply arrived. She left without another word. 3 months later, the civil case ended in a settlement. The lake house was sold under court supervision. Half of the remaining value belonged to me. Madison's share was reduced because of funds she had already received from the property. The fraudulent debt was removed from my credit record. Dad agreed to repay part of it and lost control of his company during restructuring. He avoided prison, but the official findings followed him. His business was sold to a former competitor, and the proceeds paid employees and suppliers before he received anything. My parents sold their house and moved into a small rental. Madison and Tyler never married. He ended the engagement after she demanded that he use his savings to rescue our parents. She accused him of betrayal in a long online post. Most of her friends quietly stopped responding. For years, Madison had mistaken attention for love. When the attention disappeared, she discovered how few real relationships she had built. She called me once from an unknown number. Are you happy now? She asked. I could hear anger in her voice, but also fear. I did not do this to you. I said. You left. Yes. You knew everything would fall apart. No. I replied. I only stopped preventing it. She was quiet. Then she whispered. Mom says you hate us. I looked around my apartment. Sunlight filled the room. A basil plant grew on the kitchen windowsill. Invitations to Nina's wedding sat on the table. My life was not dramatic or perfect, but it was mine. I do not hate you, I said. I just refuse to disappear so you can shine. I ended the call and blocked the number. 1 year after my canceled birthday, I returned to the lake for the first time. I did not own Grandma's house anymore, but Aunt Rebecca rented a cabin nearby. She, Nina, and a few close friends surprised me with a small dinner on the porch. There were no expensive decorations, no private restaurant, no slideshow, just candles, grilled corn music, and a chocolate cake leaning slightly to the left. Nina's joke from the year before. After sunset, I walked down to the dock alone. The water was dark and still. I remembered being 10 years old, sitting in that same place with Grandma. Madison had thrown a fit because I caught the first fish of the day. My parents made me give it to her for a photograph. Grandma found me crying later. She said, Claire, kindness is a gift, but if people demand it from you, it becomes a cage. I had forgotten those words. Standing beside the lake, I finally understood them. The settlement money did not make me happy. Watching my parents lose their house did not make me happy. Madison's broken engagement did not make me happy. What made me happy was waking up without fear. It was checking my bank account and knowing every dollar was mine. It was learning that, no, could be a complete sentence. It was discovering that real love did not require me to become smaller. People sometimes ask whether I regret leaving without a final confrontation. I do not. My silence was not weakness. It was the first decision I made without asking my family for permission. They called their life perfect because I kept cleaning up every crack before anyone could see it. When I walked away, I did not destroy that life. I simply stopped hiding what it had always been. And that is the lesson I carried out of my 30th year. Sometimes the best revenge is not making someone suffer. Sometimes it is removing your hands from the collapsing wall, stepping into the sunlight, and letting the people who built the lie finally live beneath it. My parents canceled my birthday because they believed I would always understand. They were right about one thing. I finally understood everything, and this time I chose myself.